You should have been there. I hope they put that whole thing in a, museum or something so you could visit it. Maybe it'll be part of the ride or something so that you can see that whole thing.
Welcome back to Wicked, the official podcast, your all-access pass into Oz. Each week, we're taking you behind the curtain of one of the most beloved stories ever told, following the cast and creative team who brought Jon M. Chu's epic vision to life. It's me, your trusted host, Chris Murphy. I'm a staff writer at Vanity Fair, and I'll continue to be your guide on this epic journey full of fate, magic, and friendship. Today, we're stepping into the sights and scenes that make Wicked for Good feel larger than life. We'll explore the artistry behind the worlds you see on screen. From the towering architecture of the Emerald City to the enchanted forests, the yellow brick road, the Wizard's Tower, and the floating castle in the sky.
Alphaba, I didn't know it was you. You made it.
We'll hear from the creative minds who built this world by hand and captured it deftly on camera. Production designer Nathan Crowley, cinematographer Alice Brooks, editor Myron Kerstein, and of course, director Jon M. Chu. And from the cast, Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, Jonathan Bailey, Jeff Goldblum, Marissa Bode, and Bronwyn James share what it felt like to inhabit these sets, perform with VFX animals, and step into a world that was sometimes fully constructed around them, and sometimes completely imagined. And fair warning before we dive in, from here on out, spoilers abound. So if for some reason you haven't seen Wicked for Good yet, you might want to save this episode for later. Here's director Jon M. Chu.
I knew if she flew into the sky at the end of movie 1, I wanted to see how powerful she has become at the beginning of movie 2. Like, just straight up, what is she? And Batman, the Tim Burton Batman was like one of the biggest movies as a child for me. It was so badass and so cool, and he was like sort of the anti-hero. And so I loved to be able to see, all right, what does Alphaba do on a daily basis? Oh, she's trying to free the animals or get people to know that the wizard is lying. And so to see this iconic road, the yellow brick road, actually being built, this promise that the wizard set up, the Oz of tomorrow, this beautiful, epic, optimistic look at what Oz could be, or at least that's how he's selling it. And then now we get to see it. And it is a mundane day. It's probably very cold, and these animals are not allowed to speak. Oz has changed. And so has the opposition. And so when she comes rip-roaring in, I wanted to feel like we're in a Marvel movie, that she's that badass, she's that powerful, and Alphaba is back.
Retreat! Guards, retreat! Witch! It's the witch!
Because I think you need to show that before when she goes back to her nest, as we're calling it, how difficult of a life that actually is. It's her bat cave, and her bat cave, it doesn't have Alfred. Her bat cave's just her. Sometimes standing up and having courage is a very lonely endeavor. I often think about that in even directing. When you have to hold a whole story in your head and you're trying to communicate bits and pieces to everybody, being a director is a very lonely experience.
Oh, wow.
And everybody is shaking their head. That's not the right choice. That's not the right choice. You're never going to do that. And of course you have a great crew that's going to go with you no matter what. However, you hope you're not wrong. And I think that that's what Alphaba is going through. And I think Cynthia was going through that as well. And Ari, that every step we had to hold each other's hands, say, keep going. We may be making the wrong choice, but you cannot be worrying about that. Make the truthful choice.
I love that we get that from Alphaba. And then we get, a peek into Glinda's life. And we also get a little Glinda backstory too. We see her in, thank goodness, her new life as the wizard's right-hand woman. We get the viral moment, the viral dance again, which we love to see. Can you talk to me about that? I was cheering. Yeah. I was hooting and hollering for that viral dance moment again.
So yes, in Everyday More Wicked, as we come into that after the cold open, I knew we needed to set up the propaganda in the world, and what is Morble's role now? What is Fanny and Shen Shen's role? What is Glinda doing? And so this little whistle stop tour for her. We actually had more than that's in the movie, where she stops on this train and meets the sort of these, we call them the Good Scouts, who, are these, Glinda the Good, Girl Scouts, basically. And we get to see her role, and she's living her role. She's spreading goodness. And it is, yes, exactly. And it's, she's in her bubble, essentially. What does her bubble look like, feel like, and how can we rectify the fact that she's doing this while at the same time they're selling that the witch is wicked, and what is good versus wicked in this? That's why we end, our last frame is the two posters, good versus wicked. And so then when she gets to her I Want song, which I love, that Couldn't Be Happier is essentially her I Want song, we get more context to where she is. It's not just about the boy. It's about a way of looking at the world, and that allyship, or coming from privilege to look at the injustices of other people when it doesn't affect you, is as courageous and requires just as much bravery as stepping out when it does affect you. Maybe even more, because you actually don't have to do anything.
With this perfect finale, the cheers and the valley, who wouldn't be happier? So I couldn't be happier.
To bring Oz fully to life, the world itself had to expand, from Shiz University to the deepest corners of the Emerald City and beyond. And no one shaped that vision more than production designer Nathan Crowley. Here's Nathan.
I knew we had to have 3 towers, and we had 3 great characters of the Emerald City. So it was like, okay, this works. We can put Morrible in a propaganda room, because she becomes a very big person in this next story. And then Glinda, who we could then change the colors, because she's all pink, and then we could touch back on. Her tower could be more the Hollywood, the golden age of Hollywood, and I could go into that interior. And actually, I could talk about Cedric Gibbons, who designed The Wizard of Oz, and how he had a fascination and really created that style in Hollywood. So I could really sort of lean into the nostalgia of that. And then the wizard, of course, is the wizard, and he is the illusionist. And so I knew I could have these 3 towers, and I knew that if I could, I would have to go, design-wise, I'd have to go solid, and I had to go vertical with tall openings. But if I could then, somewhere in the tower, allow balconies to twist the architecture, I could invent a new architecture that wasn't Deco, Nouveau, modern, Beaux Arts. I could actually twist it into whimsical and flow. And even though that's in the visual effects area, we still drew it and designed it all because we had to figure out what it was.
Designing Oz was one thing. Filming it at its full scale was another challenge entirely. Here's cinematographer Alice Brooks.
We shot on 17 different sound stages. And within those 17 sound stages, we had 73 iterations of sets. And we had 5 backlots, 2 the size of 4 American football fields, each in size.
Wow.
And my team alone of lighting and camera and grip, those are the departments I oversee, had 200 people on my team.
200 people.
It's a massive scale, and the sets were huge. They were 45 feet tall on the interior sets, and they were 65 feet tall on the exterior sets. And I had to figure out how to create a visual roadmap as big as Oz itself to be able to track all of this. And we had plan after plan after plan. And what I love about Jon is we make all our plans. We've got our shot lists. I've got the color story for the entirety of both films so that everyone, with reference stills, so that everyone can be on the same page. And then we lie down in the middle of Emerald City with hundreds of dancers around us. And he looks at me and he's like, "Isn't this just like we were in film school?"
Alice and Jon's creative partnership started long before Wicked.
My mom helped when I wanted to get into film school. She had me walk in my application to USC, and she said, "We don't have money to send Alice here, but she deserves to go here." And a couple of weeks later, I had a full scholarship.
Wow.
And that experience has changed my life. I met Jon there, and just like Alphaba and Glinda met at Shiz.
Yeah, it's like Shiz University. It's very Aussie, and it's literally just like Shiz.
And like Alphaba was like, I was an outsider. I was, it felt like I walked into a space where everyone came from privilege, and I was this outsider who was there, and I had my secret of being in school there. And but I was working really hard, and Jon always says he started to look for the people who were working harder than anyone else.
That work ethic carried straight into Wicked and Wicked for Good.
We made weekly at-a-glance packets so that everyone on my team could be on the same page. And those at-a-glance packets had, I created something that I now call a color script, which is a single reference image per scene in the movie. So we had these one-word intentions, and then we had a single still that represented the color and tonality of every scene in the movie.
And when it comes to color, there's no Aussian image more defining than the yellow brick road.
We had all these fields of tulips, of the rainbow tulips. But then on the other side, for the second film, I was growing yellow tulips, which I haven't really told anyone yet.
Yeah.
And so we had we had hidden behind some hedgerow, we had another 1 million yellow tulips because we need the color for the bricks and the munchkins. Once we sort of decided, it's like, okay, who's going to make the bricks? The munchkins are going to make it. The animals are going to be essentially enslaved and to labor, forced labor to build it. But we had to start with the color and the bricks. So we needed yellow because we see the process of how the bricks are being made. So there's a montage of the bricks and how that happens. And so we had to really explain that visually. And so we had this sort of winding yellow brick road, which was just, I used to sit on with Jon actually after we built it. It's like, oh, we're on the yellow brick road.
Like, we didn't process that until you're on set and you're looking at the yellow brick road and you have the Alphaba on it. And you're like, oh my gosh, we're in Oz. This is like the Oz we have grown up with.
The next time we return to the yellow brick road, it carries a different weight. In No Place Like Home, Alphaba sings to the animals fleeing Oz, trying to convince them to stay and fight. We see Dulcibert again, and we meet the Cowardly Lion.
We just can't fight anymore.
When I was just a cub, she snatched me from the only home I ever knew.
We work with two great companies, ILM, of course, and Framestore. And Framestore was focused on that sequence specifically, and they did Dillamond originally. And I always felt like we were never given the full animal story on stage. And so this is our opportunity to do that. The hard part is you can't get too deep because it's about Glinda and Alphaba. So you can't go too deep, but you need to see yourself in them. And for me, picking the animals was a whole thing. It took many, many months to pick the right animals. They all had to be sort of Ozified. So even if it's a fennec fox or a bison, they had to be a little bit different than what we know. We wanted to see some animals that we recognize from the world of Oz from movie one. Some of the band members might be in there. And then you look down the road and the road has a hole in it. It's broken. And that, just the image itself, when she sits in the hole between the two worlds, between the dirt and the mud and nature and some grass trying to fight its way through, to the yellow brick sort of structured world and these animals with bags ready to go. It was already visually, we had to match the visuals with what the song was really saying. And the animals themselves, each one, we wanted families, we wanted couples, we wanted older couples, younger people. Like, we wanted to give the scope of, they all have certain characteristics to them, if you look closely. And even them leaving evoked so much.
It's just a place that's familiar, and home's just what we call it.
To bring a scene like that to life, the editing has to carry both the emotion and the illusion. Here's editor Myron Kerstein.
I think it's like cutting a musical number or dialogue, treating these big VFX scenes like no differently, that I'm a storyteller first. And so when I'm cutting like something like No Place Like Home, where Cynthia is practically singing against empty plates, I'm using her performance to guide me as far as like the basic building blocks of a scene. And then I'm using a lot of my imagination to then tell the VFX house, like, there's an animal here, there's a close up here, or we're going to the flying monkeys coming into the forest here. And there's a lot of back forth. There's a lot of just communication about what we're trying to evoke emotionally. And then we start to work with the thousands of animators to,
Wow.
work tirelessly in these dark rooms together. I see myself as a co-parent with Jon and Mark. I'm just there all the time, and I treat editing like I'm making this giant collage, and I'm finding all these found elements. I'm taking the fashion here, and I'm taking the production design over there, and taking the music and the VFX, and I'm just making this beautiful collage. But Jon and I always felt like there's this handmade feel to it, and how do we continue that through the entire process?
Yeah. Wow. I'm thinking about, you've probably seen more footage of Wicked than any person in the world. Right?
There is no other person in the world. There's no other person in the world who has seen all these dailies. I have this real amazing perspective in that I'm the first audience member. And so I get to sit in a small theater and watch these hours of dailies pour into my edit room. And that's a very sacred space.
After the break, we ascend to the top of the Wizard's Tower and then step into the chaos that ruins Glinda's wedding. And later, we journey beyond Oz, from Nessa's governor's mansion in Munchkinland to Elphaba's forest nest and beyond.
As a storyteller growing up watching movies, this is the dream. This is universal.
Welcome to Scene on the Screen, hosted by me, Jacqueline Coley from Rotten Tomatoes. We're your all-access pass to the people who bring your favorite Universal films to life. We play games.
These are based off of quotes.
Suppose a task cannot be completed.
From Wild Robot.
Talk movies.
It literally is a moving painting.
And spill the tea.
I hit our stunt performer so hard, they had the imprint of my shoe on his chest.
Check out Scene on the Screen, available now on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms.
Welcome back. We're high above Emerald City now, inside the Wizard's Tower, where spectacle and illusion are part of the architecture itself. Here's Nathan Crowley.
I knew we had to make the wizard's head because of the Wizard of Oz, and it's like, I am Oz. You can't, not even in Wicked, it's like you have the head, you have a mechanical head.
Yeah.
It's intimidation. We can't allow that not to be puppeted and real. But the task was, that was really the bigger task, bigger than building the train, because to puppeteer every part of the face. So we had Chris, the puppeteer, who I think he worked on Warhorse. He made us a little maquette. So we got a face, and we have lots of 3D printers. So we printed up panels. It wasn't it wasn't Jeff's face at that point. And we just see what movements we can get out of a head. A little maquette, it's a little maquette. And so he came and we showed Jon, and Jon fell in love with it. He was like, this is great. And I said, now we have to make it 15 foot high, and we have to cantilever it and put hydraulics on it and move it through a curtain. And then we got, there's engineers back there doing the hydraulics. There's the puppeteers, and there's people pulling the curtains. So you can come, because you come through with an eye, like, so it has to live, especially with Get Me the Broom of the Wicked Witch of the West. I mean, come on, you got to have that's such a fantastic line.
It's so good.
It's so good. And so to make that, and then it was like, okay, one of my art directors Chris came up to me and said, okay, should we try and get this in Jeff's? So we try and scan Jeff's face and make as much of it so it looks like him. It's like, yeah, let's give it a go.
Bring me the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West.
Nathan Crowley's sets. How about how that, in the movie, in the 39 movie, you see the man behind the curtain in a little kind of like a little kiosk, but here you see my workplace where I do all my inventing, and you see Chris Clark's, Chris Clark, who did the who did the head. That was no small task. That was real. That's not CGI.
And the giant wizard's head is just the start. Wonderful pulls back the curtain on the wizard's inventions, as Jeff Goldblum explains.
You should have been there. You should have been there. I hope they put that whole thing in a, museum or something so you could visit it. Maybe it'll be part of the ride or something so that you can see that whole thing. And I'll go back there with you and I'll talk you through, here's where we did this and then we did this. You should have seen it. It was painstaking and delightful and delicious, but meticulous, Alice Brooks's cinematography.
The hardest shot to pull off was in Wonderful.
Here's Alice Brooks again.
When they get on the broom and come and ride from the upper level to the lower level, Jon had always described it as the Peter Pan ride at Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
And but no one understood that he actually wanted a ride for the women to get on. And so the set was built. We were going to shoot it in 3 weeks. And he said, no, they have to ride a ride. And so special effects team had to build a track, like a roller coaster track for them to get on and belt in and ride this ride. And because it was in an existing set, I then had to fit a crane in there and then light it for the lights to dim down and then dim to pink and then to green. And there just wasn't very much space. And so it took a lot of math and science to try to figure out how we all fit into this what was a cavernous room became very small very quickly when the ride was built.
And it was very delicate because sometimes, the VFX people want to make the lights brighter and more magical. And you're like, no, I want it to be a little rinky dink. Like, I want you to see the walls. I want you to see the chair. I want you to know that this isn't a fantasy magical thing. This is like, and I used to have shots of the wizard, like pulling stuff and making it like that. But it became too much about the wizard. I really wanted this heart to heart through Alphaba's point of view, how magical this moment could be. And her friend looking at her and saying, we get a second chance. Mm-hmm. Imagine what we could do together. And that's really what convinces her.
Think of what we could do together.
And the scene is deceptively simple as well. And we have some complicated things. It's a oneer from where he talks about where he puts the light on his face and then puts it over and then he takes Glinda and she disappears from the sheets. He does a magic trick. I also wanted to show like the ridiculousness of illusion, that he does these like sort of cheesy magnet versions of magic. And even if you know that they're magnets, he has tricks, it's still magical.
And a wonderful road of yellow brick. Ow! Beep, 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 beep.
That is the brilliance of deception. And so he that shot where he makes her disappear, she actually physically does disappear. She goes backstage, she hides behind the desk and is then now going around, and the shot doesn't cut. She goes I learned this from Now You See Me Too. It's like, you got to do real magic on camera and don't cut away. So she's running backstage as he's coming around, and then we have those eyeballs there, and the eyeballs are highly engineered. We have like 5 guys on remotes doing the choreography. Our choreographers are there like trying to get these engineers to be on beat so that the eyes can move and wink at the same time. And then she gets to the end and then she has to hit the timing so those doors open without slipping back there and come in for her big part at the end of that. That is like high level on all fronts, even though it looks so simple.
Yeah, I have a sort of a really big belief, and it's really from, I'm old enough to have started on films like Hook and Bram Stoker's Dracula, where it was quite practical. And it's an innate sense that when I'm watching a film and I stop at a door because they didn't build anything beyond it, or there's no transition section, and then we jump cut into the other room, it kind of upsets me because I want the flow of that journey. I want to be with that character going behind the curtain. I mean, especially in the Wizard's Chamber, you want to go behind his curtain. It's like, you really, because he's the illusionist. He's the man behind the curtain, and we have to go behind. And so linking sets together and squeezing them on sound stages, in production, there's obviously constraints on that. It's like, okay, I'm going to try and get the biggest soundstage I can so I can put these sets together and we can go from one to the other. And that causes problems in other departments, lighting, etc. And so you've got to be all on the same page with all the heads of department. And so as a team, you have to operate fluidly and together as one voice.
It's just this beautiful fantasy moment where I guess, the wizard has a lot of free time on his hands when he's not stripping the animals of all their rights and ruining people's lives and, oppressing everyone.
Here's Ariana Grande.
He, I guess, built this roller coaster in his free time, and it's in his office, and he rides it. We do magic tricks.
You do magic tricks. You do practical, real magic. I know that because all of this was built. We talked to Nathan, the production designer. Like, it's like, this isn't CGI. This isn't like you guys are like really riding a ride. You're really running around the columns and whatnot. It's that level of movie magic is so, it makes such a difference for the audience.
It made a difference for us. We had a blast that day. So I'm glad you liked it because we had a blast. The second movie is really a doozy. So we had a lovely break that day of crying and feeling the weight the weight of all of our traumas at once.
Yeah.
And we got to go on a beautiful ride together. So we loved it.
We literally had like a roller coaster, like a slow roller coaster ride to do it.
Here's Cynthia Erivo.
We were like on a ride and it was really, really beautiful. So the lights are real. The lights would change and shift, and we had these wonderful LED lights set up. So it went from pink to green, and it was beautiful. And we're sat together, flying down into the room, and it was really beautiful. It's like one of the contraptions in the wizard's sort of playpen.
Yeah, it's playpen. That's a good one.
It really is a sort of like where he makes things and creates things and breaks things apart and puts things back together, and it was a really lovely day because we were sort of playing around with what tricks we could do within the space.
After Wonderful, there's a moment when it seems like everything might fall into place. Glinda and the wizard actually manage to convince Alphaba to try it their way. But once she discovers the wizard's secret prison, that illusion shatters, and her choice sends Glinda and Fiero's spectacular wedding into complete chaos.
Well, Jon has strong opinions about weddings.
Okay, tell me about those.
He had very strong opinions about it being the most incredible, whimsical event. We had the Great Hall because we used it in the first film. It's the intimidation corridor it's all about intimidation all the way to the mechanical head. So I knew I had this space, and if Alice Brooks, the cinematographer, was saying if we light it differently, and I put floral in it with those big round windows, we could then just make it spectacular because we've got 150 foot of set, and we've got columns. And so it was like, well, I need to bring nature in here. So it was like, let's bring, and my set decorator, Lee Sandels, was like going, I'm going to figure out all the flowers and the seating and all of that. I'm going to handle that stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on how we make this like a cathedral with nature. So we bought some of the trees in. It was like, what about bringing some circular trees in?
That's nice. You had the trees.
But then it was like, I was standing there going, oh God, with the head painter, saying they don't look right. They're too dark. I can't separate them from the green. So we painted them white,
There was all this beautiful foliage on the ground and like all these like the plants and mulch and leaves and twigs and butterflies and things. And, they had to do this. They did this overhead shot, like this Darth Vader-y looking like overhead, like marching shot.
Yeah.
And I had to keep my head as still as possible so that while I was walking down the aisle, it looked beautiful from overhead. No, of course, this was different coverage than like, the frontal coverage and whatever, blah, blah, blah. But for that one shot, I had to be as like straight and even as possible. And meanwhile, I kept getting snagged on all these like twigs and things. So I'm like, I'm straining. I'm like, my neck is like this and my eyes are popping out of my head. And I just see Johnny, because he knows what the note is. It was to like, just no matter what, just keep plowing forward. And he sees me and the focus in my eyes trying to not. And he just starts crying, laughing.
Oh my God.
And by the time I get up there and I get onto the altar, we were just both gone.
Watching Ari walk down the aisle was in equal parts, like really stunning and arresting and also hilarious because she had this huge I'm sure. I don't know. I'm sure she told you. Anyway, there wasn't really many times we didn't get the giggles.
Here's our Fiero, Jonathan Bailey.
But no, it was amazing, and John Hugh would just shout bison, and there'd be this, there'd be incredible sort of physical dancers and puppeteers who would run down. So everything was made so easy, and when you're making a film like that, it's just the dream, isn't it? To live in a fantasy world where you're seeing every single department creating these sort of incredible dramatic moments.
And among the guests at the doomed wedding were Glinda's trusted companions, Fanny and Shen Shen. Here's Bronwyn James.
There's hundreds of animals coming out. And so there was like one bit where I think we were like pretending like, oh my gosh, like, there's butterflies and oh my gosh, birds. And then John was like, oh, and then I want you to just imagine like a big fleet of rats or like mice or something come like scuttling towards you. So that was really fun because then you get to make it really stupid and really silly and make Shen Shen look a bit ridiculous, which is always a good time.
Well, yeah, I mean, we definitely, we didn't have those animals there. There was not.
You don't say.
But we did have extraordinary animal actors who were in these gray suits, and they were performing, the utter chaos of these animals barging in and ruining the wedding. And it was loud, and it was scary and chaotic. And they're such beautiful performers. Robin, who plays Chistry in the movies, is just so incredible. I think a lot about our scene that we share in this movie with the green bottle, and working with him that day. There's just so much. There's so much in those performances that no one ever gets to see because they're replaced with VFX. That I wish people could experience what I experienced. So the wedding was kind of, yes, it's funny because it's funny. Yeah. In general, it's funny. What the hell? There's a stampede of, fucking lions and tigers and bears ruining the thing, and people are falling and screaming and whatever. But also, these are gorgeous performances, and it feels real because everyone is giving 150%, even if they're in a gray suit.
I mean, the other sequence I love is the intercut between the wedding and the secret prison.
Here's Alice Brooks again.
I just think it's amazing storytelling. The two of them descending the staircase at the same time as Glinda thinks she's about to enter a certain future. Alphaba thinks she's about to join the wizard, and suddenly chaos ensues.
And
a new reality sets in. And we designed the shots specifically to match, right? Like they're both walking down a narrow path. They're both walking down the set of staircases. We did matching shots on them. So it was meant to be.
John and I love cutting weddings, apparently.
Here's editor Myron Kerstein again.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was a real group effort. First of all, I want to sort of give credit also to my good friend Tatiana Regal, who also came onto the film. That we had a lot of discussions about how do we give the wish fulfillment to Glinda, but also paint this darkness with the discovery of Alphaba. And we started cutting this every way possible as far as separate scenes. And they were great as separate scenes. They were amazing. But it did feel like there was something missing. And I think that also, I've been thinking about this a lot as well lately, that so much of the film, they're apart. And we yearn for them to be together more and more as the film goes on. And I think in the intercut, in a way, not only colors each of these scenes and makes it feel much more powerful as far as intercutting plot lines, but also they feel like they're experiencing it together in some ways.
Yeah, totally.
Even though neither one of them are in the room together. And I think that there's something really unique about that in this particular film, because it's about these two characters, so much of them being together, and then these really disparate things happening to them. And then, they're incredibly challenging because, from a VFX level, you don't want it to feel like, just a junkyard of bad VFX. So, you're working tirelessly with your animators and artists to make this actually feel grounded and delightful and dark at the same time. And, how do we get to this sort of like Day of the Locust moment with like with the stampede, and, how do we make this, how do we just crush Glinda and their hopes and dreams, and at the same time just feel Alphaba's betrayal, of Glinda and the wizard, and just that she fell for it, even for a second after Wonderful. You're just like, oh my God,
how did I fall for it?
How do I fall for this? This con man.
I really love that scene. It's sort of I think the devastation that occurs when she realizes that this is what's going on after she's just agreed to join the wizard, and she's agreed that she thinks she's done something good by freeing the monkeys, and she thinks she's done something good by joining hands with the wizard and joining forces, and then discovers actually she's been tricked again. But I don't think the heartbreak is just for her. I think it's the heartbreak of what she's seeing around her. Animals in captivity and being treated really terribly. And then the nail in the coffin is to see Dr. Dillamond. And it just is so heartbreaking. And I remember shooting that, and again, there's no one there. There's nothing there.
You're just walking down.
Yeah, you're walking down the aisle where there are no animals, but you see the cage, and you have to imagine that these cages are full of beings and animals, and you get to the cage at the very end, and I don't know, it was just really sad to see. And I think that it's a peculiar thing to do, but I think I'd gotten so used to imagining and seeing that it was kind of easy to think about the relationship that she'd had with Dr. Dillamond from before, and what that was, and create that again in this moment as well.
After the break, we leave Oz's Emerald City behind and travel outward to Nessa Rose's governor's mansion in Munchkinland, Elphaba's nest tucked away in the enchanted forest, and the floating castle in the sky where she unleashes one of her most powerful moments.
This week on Scene on the Screen, join me, Jacqueline Coley, as I sit down with award-winning costume designer Paul Tazwell, the visionary behind the stunning looks of Wicked and Wicked for Good. We take a closer look at two of the iconic costumes from Glinda and Alphaba, the subtle details you may have missed, and the Broadway shows that inspired Paul's love of costuming. Step behind the scenes of Wicked for Good and tune into Scene on the Screen wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back. Outside the Emerald City, Oz opens up, starting with the governor's mansion in Munchkinland, a set built by reimagining and recombining pieces from earlier locations. Here's production designer Nathan Crowley again.
Luckily, we have enough sets and molds, and he says we need to put together this set using other sets and then add to them. So it was really about what I love. Paul Hayes is my construction coordinator along with Mark C. It was like, you know what, guys, get me these sets, because a lot of them are struck now because we're moving into the second film and the later sets, and we're turning around stages. So I said, get me these two sets and lay them out on the ground, all the pieces in the field. Wow. And let's go and look at them and see what we can assemble from. And so we assembled from the library domes to Morrible's sort of Gothic arches. We assembled these two sets, and then it's like, okay, how do we link these together? Because it's the Munchkinland. They live in nature. They're farmers. This is the governor's house. We need, glass houses. We need color, light. And so it was like, if we take wood columns with nature, we carve wood columns with nature, almost like there's an architect in Belgium called, from the turn of the century, called Victor Horta. And he used to, it's sort of that sort of romanticism of Beaux Arts where, the plants curve around. I said, if we can connect everything with these wood columns and arches, I think we have a set. And then it's a very important set because it's the Tin Man,
Absolutely.
So, and we also have to show, Nessa Rose and she becomes the Wicked Witch of the East. You know, these are big, big moments. So anyway, and so once we had these arches in place, we built this greenhouse, we put all this wood into and then I got my scenic painter out and we hand painted every single wall in Nessa Rose's office.
Wow.
And, you know, and so it was like about showing the nature of the Munchkins and where she lived.
The Wicked Witch of the East.
And then you got to design, you know, the house that falls on the Wicked Witch of the East.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Exactly. And we know, you know, God, we've got to do the house. We've got to do the Kansas house coming down through the tornado. And it's got to land on her in the Munchkinland. And if you think of Munchkin, all the hazards of designing Munchkinland are, you know, Swiss villages, French Alpine, you know, medieval, the Hobbits, you know, Lord of the Rings, you know, there's so many.
That was my first time seeing Munchkinland. I had wanted to go prior, but it just did not work out with my schedule. Just like see the set.
This is actress Marissa Bode, our Nessa Rose.
But that was my first and clearly last time in Munchkinland. And it was just amazing, but we also filmed it at night. And having these like gigantic wind machines just blowing all this air to like signify the tornado and like having these leaves blow in the wind. I definitely had some debris in my eyes by the end of the night for sure.
Wow.
It was cool because I think, if I'm remembering right, they filmed it in reverse. Just like, I think because of the camera tricks and the spiral of the camera itself, but filmed it in reverse of the house like dropping on me and my reaction looking up.
Wow, cool.
So I had to go from like being wide-eyed and scared to just like back to my one.
Kind of cool.
It was tricky, but kind of cool. I like a little challenge.
While the house is crashing down on Nessa in Munchkinland, Alphaba sees it happen through a vision from her forest nest, a space the team crafted with incredible care and intention.
In the early pre-production days, I was with Jon M. We were in Redwoods and we were thinking, well, what's the most enchanted forest we can find that might exist? Because you always go down every path. You go looking and you're getting vans and you just go, you gotta walk the space, talk about the story, the characters. Do they fit here? Do they not? And I could see that Jon was like, nothing is working out there. And then he turned to me and said, shouldn't Ozian trees be circular? And it was like, yes. And it was like, you know what? Then that literally it wiped the slate clean, because it was like, okay, we're going to sculpt the trees. So went back to construction. So we need to build whatever, 10, 50, 60 trees. And, so I go over to the sculptors. Dave Hodges runs them. And it's like, we need to, there's lots of techniques. There's like, you can get bark mold and, we can look at different barks. We can look at different shapes and how we would curve a tree, and we draw how we can curve them. But then we're going to paint the whole backing. So I have a very good scenic. It's also been with me for like 20 years, Dave Packard, who can paint anything. So he'll go around with his team and they extend the forest. With a paint job. But it occurred to us, is like, well, if the giant forests of Oz, especially the western forest, because she has to eventually get to Kiamako and become the Wicked Witch of the West. So if they'd become gianter near Kiamako, then we could have a mother tree. Not that this plays, but I think design theory is, if you have a mother tree, then Alphaba is hidden by the mother of the forest. There's design themes we have that don't play out cinematically, but help us design. So, and if it wove a nest organically into its upper canopy, then she could fly into it. And that's interesting.
Oh, cool.
And then we'd have to sculpt it. So it was like, but we decided the greens department had all these crazy branches. I don't know what kind of wood it was, but they said, look, let us try and weave it with branches as a piece of wood sculpture, honest, it's tree woven together and flows. So it kind of flows like, like she does with nature. So we, became this very organic set. The nest, I enjoyed making that because every day I would go in and I would watch the greens department. They'd be like sculpting in nature, and it was like, and they get into it. They go, "What if we do this branch here and this over here? We can create a round window." It's like fantastic, guys. It's like terrific.
My lair is very, very real. I think that the thing that I'm most proud of is how detailed everything ended up being. There's just like small things that no one would even realize was happening when you're watching it. Just whether or not, like, when you're in the lair, that I am actually picking the like what it looks like. So even down to furniture and the blankets and the things. I remember when we were shooting in the lair, I wanted to know what the flowers were, what they didn't. There were like flowers on the roof that you couldn't touch. And I loved the idea that if you touched, they were poisonous. And I loved that they were poisonous because it meant that she had thought about protecting herself.
Yeah.
And meant that the team had gone, let's get these flowers are really beautiful, but they're also like highly poisonous, so you just cannot touch them. And I was like, that's actually really clever. Such care went into all of this. That I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize how detailed everything really was. But it was real. It's real. That right down to the broom that was made. I saw when it was being made. I picked the wood that I wanted it to be made of. I asked them to, yeah. So we did research to see what it should be made of. And I had a conversation with I've been having a conversation with Jon since the day I sort of was cast, and we were sort of talking about, well, what do we want it to sort of be made of? What does it want to feel like? What does her lair want to look like? What does it want to? And we were like, what about the mangrove root? Because of it communicates with other trees. So the mangrove tree, it has a really complicated information highway that goes deep underground and communicates with the other trees. And I was like, what a beautiful idea that her broom is the mangrove root. So you see that it's sort of like intertwined, it goes all around. And then what we did was we had this wonderful artist who's just right out of like St. Martin's, who made the gummy version of it. So like there's like a solid pole in the middle of the broom, and then the mangrove is molded around it. So she created the mold of the mangrove, and I asked her to give me a claw at the top of it. So you'll notice that there's like a mini claw at the top, and we like right down to the broom, the actual broom itself, not just the handle. We tried out different colors, different shapes. At one point there was like one that was shaped like a flame, and then I was like, no, it wants to be able to, if I put it down, I want it to be able to stand on its own. And I want a wide enough base so that if I have to use it, then I can like, so we ended up with this sort of like, almost like rhombus or something like that.
Like a rhomb.
Yeah.
Sort of like,
So that it was flat at the bottom and then a little bit less at the top, but there's surface area. But we made all of those decisions right down to the color. There was a version where the broom was sort of reddish, like a reddish wood, but that didn't feel right. And then it was like a darker sort of deeper wood. And then there's a black version, or there was like a warmer sort of wood. And then there was the wood that I got, which was sort of like tattered and distressed, but still there was a warmth in it. That was right. But we went through all of these things, picking. I had like a smorgasbord of things to pick from. I'd like that with this, and I think this works with that, and maybe we should have the element of this on this as well, to pick the details of all of it. If there's connective tissue through everything, it will read. It reads. So like there's a wonderful moment in the beginning of Wonderful where, and if you blink, you miss it. He slides the broom to Glinda, and he slides the broom to me. It looks like CGI, but that is the broom going into my hand.
That's so cool when you
That is the real broom going to my, and I would catch it every time. It was like a magnet to my hand because I knew it very well. I understood that broom. That broom was my broom. I know how to catch a broom. I know how to catch it. So it would always right into the hand every single time.
When we reach No Good Deed, Alphaba steps into her full force, alone at Kiamako, the floating fortress she now claims as her own.
It's one of my favorite sets, designs, I should say, because there's a trope of fantasy about castles in the sky. You know, it's a fantastical thing. So I love the fact it reaches out to the impassable desert on a thin bridge, because ultimately that becomes Fiera and Alphaba's journey. It's as far west as to me, Oz is this green island surrounded by the impassable desert. And so it's reaching into their future. And I love the fact and the battlements. So first of all, how do you create a floating castle without anyone realizing it's floating? And also because she defies gravity. So you have these upside down arches and these other arches, and there's a thin nothingness. That castle was built in the time of the Grimmery. So it floats. The top section floats because they don't connect. You know, you see that. Yeah. You see that line across it. There's no connection. There's no architectural connection, and it holds the battlements up. And to me, that was a sort of defining thing. It's Fiera's ancient castle. It's abandoned. It belongs. It's an ancient. You know, it belongs in the time of the land. So it's actually one of my favorite designs because the story of Alphaba being pushed west, I think, to become the Wicked Witch of the West is tragic and beautiful. And the fact she has to become the villain for Oz needs a villain, you know, and I just love the fact she's an outcast. Eventually it reveals to Glinda that she has to take the stand. She has to become the good Alphaba.
At Kiamako, all that design meets reality. Shooting No Good Deed meant capturing Alphaba's power up close. Here's cinematographer Alice Brooks.
Nathan built the columns, and so built the columns. So there's a blue screen all around us, but he was able to build the columns, which was wonderful because I used real flame light on Alphaba in there. And so as the monkeys are lighting the torches, we had real torches. We had a real fire that like bursts at her. So I was able to use that real firelight. And then when the Grimmery opens, we had this really hot light. You see it, visual effects then took it and makes it burn out of the Grimmery. But we had a very hot light there hitting Cynthia's face. And we're handheld there. And when we were on the crane, because we actually were quite high off the ground, we used something called a mimic rig, which is a handheld rig on a techno crane. And we're really, really close to her. She flies in, and just the power of that voice and that performance.
Yeah.
And to make sure we captured it, because Cynthia was giving it her all. And she has to pretend, she has to imagine. We all had to imagine flying monkeys all around us. So I was trying to give her as much as I could with the real flames and the Grimmery lighting her face and the feeling of the camera being close and interactive with her.
I mean, we knew from the very beginning, No Good Deed had to tear the f***ing house down. Like, it's Cynthia on her own becoming the Wicked Witch of the West, if that's what they wanted to be. Like, it was all that, it was the culmination of frustration and being forced to be something she's not, and her saying, F it, let's go. You want to see my power? I will show you my power. To Cynthia, at the same time, it was much deeper than that. It was her questioning her own life and her own choices. And in a weird way, we had tried flashbacks throughout the movie, different because she has vision, so you can see the past and the front. And we tried a lot, and it was just like, people know this movie. Like, we don't need to do that. That's one of the discoveries we made in the last year. It was like, they're right there with us. Don't worry about going back and reminding everybody. However, this was basically built into the song. It was a great moment to see Nessa, Dr. Dillerman. It doesn't just have to be a thought. We could actually see her. And Fiero, and when she sees that moment, the moment that changed everything, the moment she made the wheelchair fly.
Mm-hmm.
she questions her own intentions. Was I just seeking good or seeking attention? And when seen through an ice cold eye and you see a Morrible watching, you get a perspective that you didn't see in the first movie, that it all culminates this moment. Like, maybe I was this all along. Maybe they were all right. And she just like takes off and owns her power. I would like to remind you that Cynthia was alone on a blue screen. There's no monkeys. There's nothing. Like, this is a solo. This is a soliloquy. Yes, we added the monkeys later, but like, and we have certain pieces of the set, but this is just her with a camera.
Her with a camera. That's it. Just her with a camera singing live every take.
Kiamako is all blue screen, so it's like you have the podiums and you have all the plinths and the poles, but the actual space around, because it's meant to be in the sky, is all blue. And so doing something like No Good Deed was insane because there was nobody there. It's just me. And then within the whole film, I'm flying.
Wow. I mean, did you ever get sick of it? Or was it always fun?
No, I love to fly. I love being in the flies. I love being in the harness and in the wires. But it was always so funny. People would always joke and be like, "Oh, I mean, I want to fly. I can't. It must be so much fun. I can't wait to like try it." And I'd be like, "It's definitely an acquired taste, because it isn't just about." It looks like it's easy, but that is partially because I'm used to what the feeling is. But most of the time it's quite painful.
I imagine the harness.
The harness is quite painful. It's you if you've got it on in the right way, it's not pleasant. It can chafe, it can burn, it can pull, I think I lost the feeling of the skin on my left leg or something like that, and like, it wouldn't come back for ages because it pinches in places.
Pinches nerves. Yeah,
to keep you in. And so because I was in it so often, I lost the feeling in it. I couldn't feel it anymore. But you sort of like take the good with the bad, because I loved the feeling of being in the air. I loved flying, but I know that it's an acquired taste.
No good deed will I do.
We shot it probably like 15 times.
Wow.
We followed the truth of what, either what we would set up or what Cynthia was just giving at that moment. And that's, I think sometimes when you do a musical, it feels so technical that you forget that making a movie isn't technical. You gotta like actually just get the juice when the juice is happening. And so she delivers that. And then when she turns around at the end and she does the big note and she commands the monkeys, and the monkeys have all their equipment and they are her army now, and she's ready to kick ass. And you see the thunder is red. That sort of the evocative red with the green with her in the clouds, and she rises to the occasion. It is like, get ready, Dorothy, you're
So much of what makes Wicked for Good land, especially scenes like No Good Deed, comes from the world built around it. The sets, the lights, the movement, the texture, all of it crafted so Cynthia, Ari, and everyone else could transform into the characters we know and love. Next week, we stay with that idea of transformation, but shift to the artists working directly on the characters themselves. Costumes, hair, makeup, the details that bring Glinda, Alphaba, and the rest of Oz to life the second they appear. And Wicked for Good is out in theaters. Go experience the magic for yourself. See you next week. The official Wicked podcast is a Straw Hut Media production in association with Universal Pictures and Vanity Fair, hosted by Chris Murphy. Video, soundtrack, and music from Wicked and Wicked for Good, courtesy of Universal Pictures. Produced and edited by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, and Madison Cross. Mixing, sound design, and video editing by Silvana Alcala. Additional graphics by Ali Ahmed and Anna Claire Munoz. Production assistant Ashley Cahan. With special thanks to our partners at Universal Pictures: Nicole Quenqua, Jennifer Chamberlain, Holly Vanderboord, Dean Smith, Madeline Marfis, Madison Fishman, Samantha Duarte, Katie Malley, Abby Holmes, Nikki Walsh, Marissa Mahoney, Allie Grove, and Vanessa Nakara. New episodes every Thursday. See you next week.
So there was like one point where Bowen as Fanny just like whips his head round and he's like, beasts,